Okay, Stephen Rubio and I are back for part two of tonight's What They Said. I've had to switch over to my laptop from the desktop. Um, so the image may be a little different, sound quality a little different, but we're picking up with part two, Joker 2. And before we get to that, Stephen, I did look up the two actresses that I thought might have been the Aubrey Plaza character.
Uh-huh.
I mentioned Naomi Watts. I also wondered if it was Portia Doubleday from Mr. Robot, and even Lady Gaga. Ironically enough, in view of the film we're about to discuss, I thought it might have been Lady Gaga. Okay, Joker 2. So why don't you start this time, Stephen? I started off
Okay.
on the previous
I'm
ones.
I'm going to actually look at a note here. As I had mentioned this in the previous video, I thought maybe I should just quote him so that I don't get it wrong. This is Matt Zoller site over at Roger Ebert's site talking about
Good
Joker. I'm just
TV,
going
Greg.
to excerpt a little part there. He says he didn't like it, but then he says this. Still, I have a certain sneaky and probably misguided admiration for Todd Phillips taking the unlimited blank check he had after making a $1 billion Oscar winning hit and spending it on something so mystifyingly opaque and seemingly anti audience. How many times in a filmmaker's life do they get the chance to do something that makes no sense to anyone but them? This is from a guy who didn't like the movie. But what he liked, as he did with Megalopolis, which the pieces on both movies, is the kind of the audacity of Phillips saying, "Hey, you want to pay me? Okay, let's see what we can do. I already made Joker. I already know how I wanted that to go. I'm not going to remake it. I'm going to look at it. Some of the maybe more convincing proponents that I've read suggest that the second one is a commentary on the first one. Oh, okay, whatever. I don't know that it is, but that's an explanation as good as any. Um, the main problems I had there were two. One was a problem, and one was just odd. I'll start with the odd one. When Joaquin Phoenix was in Joker, he deserved his Oscar. He was that good. But even then, I don't know that he was as good as Heath Ledger was in Dark Knight, which is not Joaquin Phoenix's fault. But I couldn't quit thinking about that. Well, this time in this movie, I kept thinking that Joaquin Phoenix isn't quite as good as he was himself in the first one, which means he's now at least two steps of quality removed from Heath Ledger, who to me sets the standard for that. But it was weirder still for Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn because Margot Robbie's played that character at least three times that I know of. Suicide Squad, I never saw. It was supposed to be so terrible. Birds of Prey, I saw. Oops, it was a real stinker. The Suicide Squad, which you have to say the because it's not Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad is actually a good movie, and I liked her in it. The point is, these aren't movies that I love, and I do like Lady Gaga, although I haven't seen much of her in movies. Now, having said all of that, every time she shows up in the Joker 2, I thought, I wish Margot Robbie was in this. Yeah, and even though I didn't have that great an impression of Margot Robbie as Harley. So again, the main character actors, there was nothing wrong with them except that they weren't as good as other versions of that same thing. And that doesn't help a movie when they're as important as those two. That's the odd one. That may just be me. The thing that really got to me, it's a musical. Everybody knows that by now, I guess. It's a bad musical. Okay, we can make arguments about whether we're making a commentary on the fans or whatever, but no, it was a musical and it was bad. Uh, the versions of the songs that they did, it was mostly classic songs. Lady Gaga is certainly capable of singing those songs. She's made albums with Tony Bennett. I mean, It's not Lady Gaga's fault. Joaquin Phoenix played Johnny Cash. It's not like he can't sing. The presentation of the songs was flat. The musical aspect of it was no good. Every time there was a song, the movie stopped. And after a while, I was like, "Oh God, not another song." They're not bad songs, you know. I have no. I'm not against those old classics. I'm like Fred Astaire. Love my Fred Astaire movies. No, they were just bad in this movie. So you got a movie that stops every once in a while to be a bad musical, and so there you go. It's 2 hours and 20, and that could have been an hour and 40 without those half hour of bad musical interludes that I thought just wrecked the movie. And then the problem is with all that, I didn't even care about the movie, which was Joker in jail, Joker in the courtroom, Joker in jail, Joker in the courtroom. Who cares? You know? Now I understand that you might say, like I say, it's a commentary. It's like put it on the Blu-ray extras disc or something. Just watch the first one and then listen to the commentary where Todd Phillips tells you what he was really trying to say. That's fine. But for me, I'll watch the first one again, and I probably will never see this one again.
Right at the end, you actually hit upon one of my major complaints about this that I'll get to in a second. Um, but did Joaquin Phoenix actually win the Academy Award for the first one?
I think he did. Yeah, he was up
Oh,
against
wow. Okay.
it was
Interesting.
Javier Bardem or somebody. He was up against some good people,
Yeah.
but I don't want to say he didn't deserve it. He was great.
I'll just recount the couple of things very quickly that I really liked about the first one. And I'll add a third, which was Joaquin Phoenix. Some people thought this was way too much. Some people thought it was misplaced, but I actually found the first film, its weird connection to Scorsese, to Taxi Driver and the King
Mhm.
of Comedy. I found it really interesting that someone would do that with such a big budget film and, a lot riding on it financially. And it also came out at the same time, almost the same time as The Irishman, which I found, sort of
Mhm.
like so much later Scorsese disappointing. And I remember Scorsese at the time at his big editorial in the New York Times, what's happening to movies. And I kept thinking, why don't you go see this film? Even though he wasn't, he was complaining about superhero films, but I know he wasn't complaining about Joker because he actually was almost going to be the executive producer at one point, but there seemed to be a little bit of a disconnect there. And the other thing I really loved about the first one, I hate to bring him up twice in the same Zoom night, but its connection to Trump. I thought to me, there have been two in the whole 10 years, and God hope we all hope it's over soon. The 10 years of Trump, the two great movie moments are one in Jordan Peele's not Get Out, but the follow up, which was what,
Yes.
Them, I think,
Yes.
where the family says to the shadow family, "Who are you people?" And the mother, I think, says, "We're Americans." Which I thought was an incredible Trump moment. And the moment in Joker, the first one, where after he's shot Robert De Niro, he's being escorted away in the police car, and Cream is playing White Room, and every manner of bedlam is happening on the streets. And I guess it's a cop, or I can't even remember if it's a taxi driver, looks bad at him, and he looks back at uh, Joaquin Phoenix and says, "You see what you've caused to happen? You see this?" And he just smiles and he says, "I know, isn't it beautiful?" And I thought that was just an incredible Trump moment. There were other things I really liked about the first film. The new one, the first thing I'll complain about is exactly what you said. The absolute nothing, there's nothing to this film. The Joker's in jail. He befriends, what seems to be like a groupie or, some weird kind of stalker woman who wants to carry on his work. He goes to trial. They sing a few songs. He gets convicted, and then he gets murdered, or maybe not murdered. Maybe they've left it open for a sequel. There's nothing to it. nothing interesting happens. It's him in jail, it's him in the court, him in jail, him in the court, and she kind of goes in and out, and there's musical numbers. I can't believe that they stretch this out to 2 hours. You want some interesting things, unexpected things to happen. Um, Now the music, I didn't dislike it as much as you. About 50-50 for me. I liked To Love Somebody, which I thought was almost a parody of the Sonny and Cher show, very specifically, the way they used to insult each other. I liked, not surprisingly, and I can't even remember the context in which it was used. I think it was where she maybe visited him in jail. I liked Close to You,
Okay.
as I always like Close to You. And I thought she did a good job on it. I really didn't like you. Or maybe you were maybe a bit more forgiving of the Showbiz Tin Pan Alley numbers. I didn't like any of those. The Tony Bennett side of her. I actually thought she was pretty good in a badly conceived character. I don't go and see all the Marvel films, so I can't compare her to Margot Robbie. What you say may very well be true. I kind of liked her in it. And, I like some Lady Gaga songs. I didn't see A Star is Born. I guess she got her start on American Nightmare. I didn't see that. I think it's maybe the first thing I've seen her in. And I don't know, I thought she had a presence. Wasn't there a Harley Quinn in the whole early Tim Burton, the early ones with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Did
I
Harley
don't
Quinn
remember.
at one
Oh,
point?
that's a good question.
Was it
That was
Alicia
Mr.
Silverstone, maybe?
Arthur played Mr. Freeze. It was the one with Jim Carrey and
I think it was Alicia Silverstone. Yeah.
yeah, Lisa Silverstone, but I don't know if
Okay.
that was her character. I think she was just a hench person of Catwoman.
Oh, maybe. I think she did turn up. Yeah, Phoenix was much more interesting in the first film. He just seemed lost in this one, like what to do with the character. There should be something happening with that character. Instead, it was just he kind of mopes around. He gets abused, humored by those guards. Um, maybe you can explain to me why, when he decides to take over his case and become the lawyer, why he adopted that broad Southern accent. I don't know. It was the one advancement of the character, but I didn't get that at all.
I think I read that he was based it on Kevin Costner and JFK.
Interesting.
That's
Okay.
where he got the voice. Well, I don't know why he did that, but
Well,
I
it's
think
at
I
least,
read that. Yeah.
yeah, it's at least interesting. It's got some basis in the world. Um, and I'm almost out of things to say. They had a little bit of a touch of the whole Seinfeld finale thing going on, where they trot one character after another out from the first film. Zazie Beetz, who was the neighbor, she shows up,
Mhm.
and Lee Gill, who was the guy who witnessed the brutal murder in the first film, he shows up. The staircase shows up. It was
Yeah.
almost, like to make us think of the better film. Um, I'm down to nothing. I've got one other note. If you stuck around long enough and bothered to look it up, that song that Joaquin Phoenix sings over the end credits, do you know who that's by?
I already forgot the song.
It's a Daniel Johnston song.
Oh,
I guess the kind of utterly cultish singer-songwriter who uh, he commit suicide. I can't remember, but they made a documentary about him,
mhm.
the Devil and Daniel Johnson. I thought it was quite good. I don't know a lot of his music, but that was really interesting. And I was thinking that would be a boon for the people that run his estate if this film hadn't been such a flop. Like
Yeah,
maybe they
it'll
said,
be the soundtrack album. Maybe it'll be good.
yeah, we maybe Lady Gaga does have a soundtrack album that closely mirrors the film, but I'm sure when they signed on, they said, "Wow, we've won the lottery. We've
Yeah.
given one of Daniel's songs to Joker." Didn't know it was going to make $2 million or something. I don't know what else to say about it. I think I liked it marginally better than Megalopolis. I do this running thing where I rate films and post them on the message board. I gave Megalopolis 4, and this one 4.5, or maybe 4.5 and 5. I think I liked a couple of the musical numbers enough that it got a 5 from me, but what a ponderous film.
Yeah.
And it's been a disaster. It's being taken out of, I think it set records with its drop off the second week. And if I hadn't
When I
rushed it,
saw it, there was four other people in the theater. There was a few days ago. Now,
exact,
granted, it says something that says something, but it also I cared so little. I didn't go to the IMAX version. I didn't go to the Dolby Cinema version. I just went to the straight whatever one. But when I looked at the audiences for the other ones, there were nobody there either. So the multiplex had three theaters showing that movie in three different formats, and nobody was going to it. So
and I'll bet you if you check the same theater, it's gone by today because
yeah, I would
I,
think so. Yeah, in fact, I was
yeah,
glad. I gotta say glad. Well, we laughed about Reagan. It was like Reagan. The closest it was to Berkeley was like 20 miles away. Not that I couldn't have done it, but kept thinking it would come, and it was almost like we had Reagan cooties or something. And so this in this case, no, it was there. Um, I think when I started off with sites, but he didn't like it. One of the things I've read that makes sense to me about what this movie was about, uh, I still have a problem with it. It relates to what Site said about it's kind of cool that he took this chance to make this movie and didn't give a shit what people thought. If Joker is about not just it's about this guy who emerges as Joker and that he's kind of loony and he kills people, but it's a character development of sorts. And the movie was massively popular because Joker was some little cool. So in the second one, the critique of the first one is that he's never cool. First off, he's back to being Arthur at the beginning of the movie. His whole defense is that Arthur and Joker aren't the same person. So don't go with that. And then they kill him off. So maybe there's another Joker at the end because the guy cuts his mouth
yeah,
open after he
yeah,
kills him.
yeah.
So what to me that says is if you thought the first one was good in some way, if you thought it was cool, it wasn't just a case of saying you should think about that again. It was crapping on all those people who was saying,
Mm.
huh, you thought that was good. This is what this guy was really like. He
Well,
was a
that
crazy moron, and the
mm,
character Joker was stupid. And uh, I just felt that in some ways it was insulting to people who liked the first one. And maybe they needed to be insulted. I don't know. But I didn't think that that the critique was well taken.
well,
And then I
supporting
just
supporting the idea of what you just said is the fact that she loses interest in him the second
yes,
that
when he
he kind of, well, I can't even
when he
remember,
says
was
I'm
it,
not Joker, yeah,
yeah, exactly, that the
yeah.
whole fantasy that she had developed was he undercut that or just completely deflated it and she lost interest. um it's funny that the stuff you said that Zeller Sites, am I saying it right? Matthew Zeller.
Matt Zoller Sites, yeah.
Yeah, he was an excellent TV writer and has written, I think, better on Mad Men than anyone ever. Um, he's saying the same stuff about this film that you started off saying almost about Megalopolis, comparing it to
Yeah.
Metal Machine Music. I think that comparison holds up better with Joker because Coppola, again, he's not thumbing his nose at a studio. That's his own money. Um, this film is somebody who had a film that made a ton of money and was hired on to do a sequel. And I'm sure the studio expected a ton more money.
Mhm.
And I do actually kind of admire him in a way that I don't. Along the lines of that argument, I admire him more than I do Coppola
Mhm.
because he really did like go off the rails in a way that would endanger his career or at least ever getting hired to do another film like this. Like
Metal
any,
Machine Music.
yeah, it's very much Metal Machine Music. And not that Lou Reed was exactly at the top of the charts,
No, but
Look, he
that was
had
the
a,
height of his career in terms of
it
that.
was, and if you think about Walk on the Wild Side, he finally broke through on top 40. Um, but Todd Phillips, if he wanted to, maybe he now wants to go off and make smaller films. Maybe
I don't
literally
know if I
finding
look
his
at
own
this,
platform.
we made like there's a trilogy. I'm already
The
forgetting the
Hangover
names.
films, that's how
The
he made
Hangover
his money,
movies,
right?
and
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
he
It's just is such a weird thing. I don't know if I could think of anything comparable, a franchise film where somebody did this. Maybe there are other examples. Um, I get the feeling that if one of them is going to be an admired film in the future, it will be the second Joker, not Megalopolis. I think Joker 2 is one of those films that enough years will pass and people will see how weird it is, and the whole the musical interludes, and it will develop a small cultish following. I mean,
That's what I agree. It'll become a
yeah.
cult
If
classic.
Showgirls
But
has,
Megalopolis will be taught in film schools because it's Coppola.
I guess
Nobody,
though,
they're gonna bypass joke. Like if I were teaching, well, I taught the first Tim Burton Batman uh, as a study of fascism, as I recall. So
interesting.
I have taught a Batman movie in the classroom, and I might teach Joker, although I probably would teach Dark Knight, but I wouldn't. I don't see why I would teach Joker too. If I was running a film program, I might have to trot out Megalopolis. I mean, I would sometimes show movies I didn't like because they were important in some way. Uh, Probably in that case, it would be a course on Coppola, and you had to show everything
Yeah, I
more than
mean,
I thought it would. But
you're
I do
right.
think that his name is going to give it a certain quality in the future that people think, well, hey, it's as good as Dracula or whatever they're
Hmm.
going to compare it to.
Yeah, Megalopolis has the connection to Coppola. Nobody's doing courses on Todd Phillips yet, but anyway, it is really interesting that I mean, I'm surprised. Did anybody at the studio take him aside at any point and say, "Look, this is not why you were hired"? Like, do you really think that word's going to get out quickly that there are all sorts of musical numbers in this? Do you think
Hmm.
that's going to go over well? Do you think people will, or did they just said, "Okay, the first one made us a ton of money. We're going to trust you. Go with your instincts." I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah. And I don't know that it's going to, and it's not like Heaven's Gate. They're going to lose money probably, but not that much. Uh, it
It's a
cost
lot,
more than the first one, but it didn't cost a gazillion dollars. And
right?
it will get money. That overseas will get it, and Joaquin Phoenix is big in France or something. I mean, I can see that it doesn't lose as much money as we're thinking about. And then, to the extent that that's all that matters to the studios, they don't care if it's the critics didn't like it. They don't even care if people went to see it. They just want to know if it made money. Maybe when it goes to home video thing, maybe it'll make money then. And I don't. I think part of what Seitz was saying is these people. I didn't quote him on this, but he said nobody who runs studios anymore, or any kind of popular media, actually cares anything about the stuff anymore. They don't care about movies or music or whatever. They care about money. Now, it's not that they never cared about money in the past, but when movies started, there were these guys, something like Louis B. Mayer. He liked movies. He had bad taste in them, maybe, but he liked movies. That's how he made his money. Now, when you make a movie, it's very hard. Okay, at that level, it's hard to find someone who will back you that cares about movies. They don't. The people who will do it, the independent market is out there. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to my sister. She said there's never anything to see anymore for people like us, meaning boomers in their 60s and 70s that don't want to see the latest Avengers movie. And
Hmm.
I said, well, I watch it like 4 or 5 movies a week. I never have a problem finding something to watch. First off, you need to watch old movies if that's your problem. But also, there are new movies being made. They are, you know, low budget, or they don't necessarily play the multiplex. And I think maybe what she wanted was to go to the movies. But
right.
no, those movies are out there. But in the meantime, yeah, the studio's not necessarily backing those. They're looking, they're looking for A24, Bloomhouse, whatever. There's saying, let's get another horror movie out there. We can make it for cheap and make God knows Smile 2, which had just come out. Smile must have been a gigantic hit, and now they got Smile 2, which the reviews I don't I read headlines because I don't want to know about it,
I
and so
saw
the
a trailer.
headlines suggest Smile 2 is better than the first, and I thought Smile was better than I would have thought, which is so then maybe this is
I saw
anyway.
I saw a trailer for Smile 2 yesterday somewhere. I was going to say, I think you're right that it is much harder to lose money now by the time it goes through all the permutations than it was when Heaven's Gate was made. It'll make streaming money, overseas money, whatever. I'm sure it'll break even in the end and make money on top of that. Um, in terms of new movies coming out, there is new stuff coming out. There's sometimes they spend a week in theaters and then they go right to streaming. There's the one that's directed by Anna Kendricks that I want to see now about the serial killer that was on the dating game, the Woman of the Hour or something.
And this
Um,
Oscar period is coming up where we get all the Oscar movies, some of
yeah,
which will be big bonanzas, but others will be little movies, you
I
know.
just wanted to mention you brought up Heaven's Gate. Somebody posted that just today, actually, yesterday, that a new version is, some new director's cut or something is out. And I said that I was willing, after having just seen Megalopolis and Joker 2, I was willing to, give it yet one more try. And I had a feeling that it might, next to those two, it might come across as, Bergman or Ozu or something, just this very low key, small film. Uh, but then I added, I'm sure it's going to be as meandering as ever. But I,
I've tried. There are movies that I'll
well, I've
watch
tried half a dozen.
again, and I'll watch them to see if they got better,
Yeah,
different, whatever.
yeah.
Uh, I've never been a fan of Blade Runner, and I've seen that one a lot of times. I keep giving it a chance. Mostly though, a movie I didn't like. I'm probably not going to get to watching it 5 or 6 times. I just watched. It was after Christopherson died, and I had a 4K disc of Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. I said, I'm going to pull it off the shelf and we'll watch that as in honor of Chris Christopherson. And of course, when you watch Peckinpah, you always know that the movies got butchered. And
Mm,
in the case of Pat Garrett, it's so complicated. There's at least three versions, and it was in the box set. Like I had to pick. It was the one that I saw in 1973, which they showed in the theater, which was the studio editing. And then there was the one that came out like 15 years later that TCM did, where they tried to put it back together again the way they thought Peckinpah wanted it. And then it turned out Peckinpah had done a print to show the studio, and some of his friends stole that print so that when the studio cut it up, they had a copy of the original. And so there's that third version, even though it wasn't completely finished. So I'm
yeah.
like, well, what do I watch? Well, I decided I'd watch the one I'd never seen before, which was this not quite finished version. Well, they're all good if you like the movie. If you don't like the movie, why would you even bother? But if something like that, I will watch it again and you know, just to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are at least maybe three versions of Heaven's Gate that have been out at different times.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's always, whenever you watch it, you always get the great roller skating scene and the great graduation scene. There's at least that. Anyway, hopefully there will never be an expanded director's cut of either of these films because I think that what we have watched is enough. Maybe somebody will one
Yes.
day take it upon him or herself to do a scaled down. Here's the good stuff from
It'll be when they put it
Megalopolis.
out on disc, they'll have deleted scenes. You
Yeah,
know it will.
that's right. Anyway, okay, Stephen. Maybe next time we'll try the novel thing of trying to find a film that we actually like and can
Well, and
say good
I'm
stuff.
just glad to be back after not, being able to
Yes,
walk or anything
and that's
for
true.
five
That was
months.
one of our
Yep.
delays, Stephen, is went in for some surgery on his knee, and
I'll point to see if I can point there. Well, behind my head, there's a door over there. Those are stairs behind that door. And for a
okay.
long time, I couldn't come up here because I couldn't walk upstairs. Well, I couldn't walk. And up here is the computer, the big screen, all of it, basically my whole life. And so I lived on my phone for a long 6 weeks or whatever.
Mm.
Now I'm good enough that my wife can go to Portugal and leave me alone. So